driving into the lane. Hayes, it hits.
Will be rebounded by Walker. Walker going to the hoop. Easy layup.
Welcome to the Pulse here on HBCU Go, a very special edition as we are going to award our inaugural HBCU Go Players of the Year for men's and women's basketball. It does not matter if you're Division I, Division II, NAIA, Division III, doesn't matter. If you are an HBCU baller, you are eligible for the award. And today, by the end of the show here on the Pulse, we're going to give away 2 awards, one for the guys, one for the ladies. Let's get into the discussion. Man, look at this championship roundtable we have for you. We have Tim Scarborough. We have James Hadnot. We have Nia Simone. We have Liv Antilla. Live for Hoops. Man, let's talk some ball. We're going to start with the guys here. James, let me throw it to you. You are the voice of HBCU basketball. We had a sheet, man. We had a lot of names on that sheet, but we could only pick one. Who did you pick for your HBCU Go Player of the Year on the men's side?
Well, there are a lot of worthy potential players. Obviously, Jacoby Hetty averaging 19 points per game, leading Bethune-Cookman to their first ever SWAC regular season title. And so he was one person to potentially look out for. Also, if you look at the MEAC, it could have been Cedric Taylor III or Bryce Harris. They're averaging basically the same amount of points, same amount of rebounds, and they were really super successful there. But I think Daeshun Ruffin got the nod because of just his sheer output scoring-wise. He has over 100 made free throws, as well as he also dishes the ball as well. And so the SWAC was so close. Obviously, you know, the best player on the best team usually maybe wins that award, but second to eighth was decided by, I believe, just 2 games. And so any team probably could have been at that second spot or maybe even challenged for that first spot. And Jackson State got Bethune-Cookman once this season. So Daeshun Ruffin is a player I chose as the player of the year.
All right, we're talking about SWAC hoops. Let's go to our SWAC girl on the staff, our SWAC woman, our SWAC lady, Nia Simone, a former SWAC baller. All right, Nia. Man, that was a lot of names. Who were you considering? Who did you go with?
Oh my gosh. There were so many incredible names. Of course, I want to give a huge shout out to Talia Logwood. I call her Talia Dogwood, but Talia Logwood. She was incredible this season for Texas Southern. I hate to see them have, be eliminated so early, but we got a chance to see her be able to grow, right? She had some ups and downs throughout the season. But one thing that remains is that her level of tenacity on the floor, on both ends of the floor. She's an incredible player, floor general, can see the floor well, but also, too, she's a 3-level scorer. So definitely want to give a shout out to her. But, of course, we had to go with Kayla Walker on my end. Kayla Walker is a veteran in the SWAC space, came over from UAPB, followed Coach Don Thornton over to Alabama A&M. And, I mean, just seeing this Alabama A&M team as a whole this season, right? Record-breaking season. And that starts with your floor general. That starts with your point guard who's able to regulate the floor and able to get everyone involved. And Kayla Walker does such a great job at doing that. She's one of the smallest players on the court, but she has a lot of heart. She has a lot of hustle. She has a lot of grit. And it's just been incredible to see how she's been able to close out her SWAC career here at Alabama A&M. So Kayla Walker was for sure my top pick in that.
All right, Nia, you have had the luxury of calling games, being on the sidelines all season long with HBCU Go, so you saw a lot of great men's action as well. When you look at the list of potential candidates who could be player of the year on the men's side, who were some names that kind of ran through your mind that you had to consider?
And just echoing everything James said earlier, right? We see Jacoby Hetty, having an incredible year for Bethune-Cookman. But of course, going back, Daeshun Ruffin, we talk about another veteran in the SWAC who's played in the SWAC, who has so much experience. And it seems that each year he just elevates his game higher and higher. And so he's just been a huge contribution to this Jackson State team. Again, they've had some ups and downs this season, but Daeshun Ruffin has always remained true to his game and continues to bring it every single night.
All right, let's jump into the Scar Watch. Tim Scarborough, Tim, I just love saying Scar Watch anytime I
So do
get a
I.
chance
Yeah,
to say that.
absolutely. I'm all for branding.
Well, there you go, man. We just rolled out the red carpet for you. Tim, when you talk about the guys, how hard of a choice was it for you picking on your panel for player of the year?
Yeah, no, it wasn't very hard, but James hit the nail on the head with the Jacoby Hetty, no pun intended, right? But Jacoby Hetty was the best player on the best team by far, and he put up good numbers. And on a given year, he probably could have got most valuable player of the SWAC and certainly national player. Then you think about the two kids at Howard, but they kind of split uh, votes because they both averaged 17.4, as James said. And then Kasami Draper at Tuskegee got his team to the SIAC championship. They locked him down in that championship game, but they triple teamed him, and he just didn't have enough help. But man, is he a terrific player! To me, he's an NBA prospect. At 6'9", 6'10", and can do the things that he does. But yeah, Daeshun Ruffin, the eye-popping numbers is what gets him the most valuable player because as we talked about, there wasn't a lot of separation between, even though they finished as the 7th seed, they could easily finish as the 2 or 3 seed, right? So a split hair in that department in terms of wins and losses. So I would say with the 8 30-point games that he put up this year, 7 in SWAC play, and just for good measure, he knocked off another HBCU with a Hampton 39-point performance here in Atlanta. So, I mean, I've seen him in person, and he's one of the smallest guys on the court. I mean, you just had to give it to him, in my opinion.
All right, back when FAMU was in the MEAC, this lady here dropped over 1,700 career points.
Oof.
Oh, her Lady Rattlers got a win early on in the SWAC tournament this week, so she just might be aglow right now. And she is joining us from the Gateway Arena. She's in the bowels of the Gateway Arena, back in the media room. Liv, I know you eat, sleep, and breathe basketball, and we just took you off the court for this special edition of the Pulse. So thank you for joining us, Liv. I know your list was very thorough because you do this night in, night out, online, on TV. This is what you do.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll be very candid. I have my phone up with the current game that's playing out there. But yeah, there was so many from the women and the men from D1 to D2. The talent that we saw across our HBCU conferences this year was unmatched. Like, especially when you look at the SWAC and the MEAC and the CIAA and SIAC for the men, it was incredible. So while, many people had the person that they chose, it was really probably a hard decision for a lot of people to fill in that 2, 3, 4, 5 because the talent was off the charts this year. And we've just seen so really good quality competition and individual performances across our HBCU landscape.
All right, so let's talk about your men's ballot. Who did you ultimately go with, and who was like right there on your men's ballot, and you were like, oh, let me go check the stats one more time before I make my final choice?
I think I'm the oddball out because my person that I selected was Larry Howell from Fayetteville State. I think, Daeshun is a phenomenal choice, obviously, when you look at the numbers that he's put up. But Larry he was incredible all season long, averaging 20.8 points per game, shooting from over 45% from the floor, nearly 40% from the three, about 7 rebounds. Like, he was on an absolute tear. And if you tuned into HBCU Go this season and you saw the Fayetteville State games, you saw it from the three, from the mid-range, from the post, flying for the dunks. And he also brought Fayetteville State, under first-year head coach at Fayetteville State, Coach Hearn, back to the NCAA tournament. They got that title of the CIAA tournament champs. He was just phenomenal to watch all year long. His impact, and while other players had impacts, he was mine. I would say, obviously, everyone's talked about Daeshun, and I give him his flowers. He's amazing. Jacoby was phenomenal too. So I think those were just, I feel like those were the top four for a lot of people, but I do want to say Travis Harper the second and Aaron Nkrumah of Tennessee State also put up obviously phenomenal seasons. When you think of Aaron Nkrumah, who earned OVC Player of the Year, and Travis Harper the second, they were averaging almost same thing as Ced Taylor and Bryce Harris. Their numbers were almost identical as well. The only difference is Aaron Nkrumah was leading the nation in steals per game. And so both of them were right there as well as like, where do they fall? So again, as I said, it was crazy making these choices. It was actually really hard.
Man, Liv, let me pass. Let's see if my metrics or my thought process might pass the smell test for you. I like to break it down between or kind of draw the line in the sand that sometimes you have the most outstanding player and sometimes you have the most valuable player. And I think wins and what the overall team success also plays a factor in that. So on my sheet, I went with Jacoby Hetty, and there was a couple of things that I liked. Look, he was the leading scorer for Bethune-Cookman. He didn't score as many points per game as Daeshun Ruffin. Well, nobody did, right? But he led the SWAC in field goal percentage, or he was right there at the top. So really smart with his shot selection. You look at Bethune-Cookman's success, and I think one of the intangible things that I really liked about Jacoby Hetty was the talk about this team all year long was Doc Bradley. Like, as long as we have Doc Bradley in the line, and I won't say that Bethune-Cookman was saying this, but it was the talk around the team. Like, oh man, get Doc Bradley in there; they're unstoppable. And he was kind of the storyline come January once his eligibility was restored. But he ultimately only played 8 games in the regular season. He was in and out of that lineup. So the consistency of Jacoby Hetty and what he was able to do there with all that is kind of the underlying kindling to that fire really impressed me, and I thought he was worthy of player of the year on my ballot.
And think about this, he wasn't even preseason. He had Daniel Ruzon, who was a preseason first team on his team, and you mentioned Dr. Bradley, who was the defensive preseason player of the year, and even Seneca Willoughby was second team all conference. And then he brought his brother back with him, Quentin Hetty, who was kind of the left-handed version, not quite as good, but still a very good basketball player. With all of that around him, he still kind of stood out with that group. So, yeah, I mean, he certainly was deserving. Had he won MVP of the SWAC, no one would have been saying, oh, he shouldn't have got it, because he did so much for that team all year round.
Liv, how do you factor in that? The intangibles, the wins of your team, some of the other categories outside of scoring? Or do you think this award is just dominated by, hey, whoever gets the most buckets?
In general, I feel like the player of the year MVPs usually go to who scores the most points. And I actually wish they would change the word to like scoring title or like best score, because we've seen years past where what you said, Tolly, was spot on. Like, there's a player who is needed. Like, Daeshun was literally needed to score that many points in order for Jackson State to compete. Whereas Jacoby was just the most important piece. So when we get into things like that, I do think other things matter. We saw Ruffin average over 6 assists a game, so he was distributing. But I do think winning has to play a part in it, and that's why we'll never see like a 10, 11, 12 player, even if they are leading the league in scoring, be, an MVP, a player of the year, because how can you simply be that if it's not adding up in the wins and loss column? So as you said, I think a lot of other things play into it, but, it's really up to the voters' interpretation of who they thought was the most important, but for sure, other things definitely play into it.
James, how do you feel about the criteria? It's really an unwritten criteria because it's whatever it's left up to the voters. What goes into your mind when you think about your personal criteria?
Yeah, I talked to Coach Theus about this because we had Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman in the last game of the season, and I didn't want him necessarily to lobby for his player because obviously he was going to have Jacoby's back, but he kind of mentioned some of the similar things that Liv and that you mentioned in regards to the points per game. At 19 during conference compared to 26 or 27 for Daeshun Ruffin. That number is comparative because Daeshun is also dishing the ball. But for Jacoby, he's leading the team. He's shooting 54% from the field, so he has great shot selection. And at the end of the day, he's the one that has the ball in his hands, making the decisions late in games. He's the one that's, scoring these 20-point games, 25-point games, 26-point games. And so I think when it comes to my personal criteria, could I have got it wrong? Did I get it wrong? I don't necessarily think so, simply because that's where the reason why I brought up how close the conference was is why, you could probably still give the nod to Daeshun Ruffin. Now, if they were, because they finished 10-8. Now, if they finished 7-11 or they finished 6-12 and he still got it, then that's a completely different kind of conversation. And so because the wins were comparative and because he also had the head-to-head win as well against Jacoby Hetty, they split the season series. I think that's where, as you say, you're splitting hairs with these players that are so good. But whether it's a head-to-head battle, whether it's are the records comparative, and then it gets to like points as well as points scored and points assisted on. Those are kind of the things that I when I made my decision, what kind of stuck out to me.
All right, I'll tell you what, everybody hold tight. We got to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about more with the women and the potential candidates for our HBCU Go Women's Player of the Year. And we're going to get more into the criteria with Nia Simone when we come back. And then a little further down the line, we're going to tell you who actually wins these awards. You're watching The Pulse on HBCU Go. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Pulse here on HBCU Go. I'm Tali Carr, joined by Tim Scarborough, Liv Antilla, Liv for Hoops, James Hadnot, and Nia Simone. We are running down our potential women's and men's players of the year, and the big reveal is coming up in just a few minutes. So we talked mostly about the men in our first segment. Now we want to get into the women. Before we get individually into our selections, Nia, you kind of teased us a little bit with who you were thinking on the women's side earlier, and you like Kayla Walker at Alabama A&M. We had the discussion about what goes into your personal criteria. So I would ask you this, Nia. Is your criteria the same for men and women, or do you look at the women's game any different? Do you look at different stats, or is it the same across the board for you?
Ball is ball. Ball is ball. And so for it doesn't matter if it's men, women, dogs, cats, ball is ball, and a little air bud, right? Ball is ball. And speaking of ballers, I mentioned Kayla Walker, but we can't forget about Zania Thomas over at Howard University, who was killing it this season, leading the MEAC in scoring, right? She's just an incredible athlete. Of course, the success you see with Howard University. So her and Kayla were like neck and neck for me. And I was like, I will go with Kayla. And now it goes, and I'm just like, okay. But of course, I cannot end this pod without mentioning Adriana Gardner, who's incredible for Clark Atlanta University this season. Maya Charles over at Winston-Salem State. Of course, your Lady Rams got their first ever CIAA championship. Yeah, hold it up. And of course, I mentioned Talia Dogwood, I like to call it, because she got that dog in her. She's incredible on both ends of the floor for Texas Southern. So I'm not going to lie, this was really, really, really hard for me. I spent about 20 minutes just kind of going back and forth, moving people around, because the options of each of these women, women hoops on all levels, Division I, Division II. We saw some incredible hoops from Winston-Salem State, Fayetteville State, of course, Alabama A&M. They're killing it in the SWAC and Division I ball right now. Howard University, what they're doing, it's just been incredible across the board. So I for sure struggled, but of course I'm going to go with Kayla Walker at the top. As I mentioned to you all earlier, 3-level scorer, a veteran in this league. She's just took her game up a notch even more this season, and it seems that she really took the bull by the horns when she transferred into Alabama A&M, and that just goes to show the success that the Lady Bulldogs have had this season. And of course, again, Howard University, MEAC, they've just been incredible. So between those two young ladies, it was tough. All of them were tough, but yeah.
All right, Liv for Hoops is literally in the interview room, and she might get kicked out, or the game might go to overtime. Who knows? So let's get to Liv in case she does get kicked out here in a second. When you look at your women who are on your list, who did you ultimately go with, Liv, and who did you consider?
It's funny because Nia literally just brought her up, but my number one went to Adriana Gardner of Clark, Atlanta. Everything Nia just said, because she was a monster this year. When we talk about, she led the entire HBCU women's basketball side in points per game the entire season. She never dropped from being the number one spot of leading all scorers in points per game. She started the season hot, going off for a career high of 41 points. And from there, she just, her junior year was so successful, getting the SIAC Player of the Year, first team. And she really, I would say her 3-point is somewhere going to senior year. I'd love to see her be like more confident in it. I think the skill is there, but she's just so good at creating space, working the mid-range, getting in. And at the beginning of the season, I was like, oh no, what's happening with Clark? Because we saw them be so successful last year. And then she really brought her teammates along with her. So I saw her as a junior during games, building up her teammates, pulling them along so that they were getting the best play out of each other. And so that's what I loved about her. Not only her scoring ability, but her mentality on the floor. Like, you can see she's super involved. She's a great teammate. So that's why she got my nod for the HBCU Go Women's Player of the Year.
All right, we will find out in just a few minutes who gets the award, but we still need to hear more about the nominees. Scar Watch. Tim Scarborough, You were on the call, on the sidelines for a lot of games. You saw a lot of these ladies up close and personal this year. Who was on your list?
Well, I started thinking about which teams had great years, and obviously Winston-Salem with that 16-game win streak. Then they lost to Fayetteville. The win streak got snapped, but then they went on another win streak and went all the way to the finals. And then watching them just hammer Fayetteville State in the final game, it was easy for me to say, they put it to them, right? So I was thinking, pull somebody from either that team or Alabama A&M, because obviously they had a great year. You think about this, they went on a 17-game win streak in the SWAC, and they lost the first game to Mississippi Valley State, one of the lowest teams in the league. So they potentially could have run the table. So, and obviously Kayla Walker was a big reason why they did what they did. But ultimately, I picked Kayla Walker. She had Moses Davenport right there by her side. And then she had Jada Belton transfer in from Texas Southern. So you get a post player and a point guard. I mean, just an embarrassment of riches. No wonder they won so many games. They might have their work cut out for them here this week in the SWAC, though. I mean, there's no guarantees. Just watching college basketball last weekend and throughout this week already, upset. That's why they call it March Madness. So no guarantee that either, of the number ones in the SWAC on the men's or the women's side will get through. But fortunately for you, Tolly, Winston-Salem held up their end of the bargain. So I did think about Maya Charles, but ultimately I picked Kayla Walker from Alabama A&M.
All right, solid choice. All right, James Hadnot, the voice of HBCU basketball. We've had a little D2 love. We've had a lot of love for Kayla Walker. When you looked at your ballot, James, what did you see?
I chose Ania Thomas at Howard because of just the points per game. Again, we kind of talk about that criteria, but when you're on the best team and you lead the conference in points, and I believe also she was one of the top teams in rebounds, that's what you really it makes it easy when you're kind of picking a player because we talked about when it's their players maybe not as high up, but they show their ability, but the record's not there. For Howard, they had the record, they had the player, and that player was Ania Thomas, and so that's why for me Everyone kind of mentioned different other teams. Obviously, we've talked and given the flowers that's necessary for Winston-Salem State. But for Howard at that level, I was just Zania Thomas was the player to pick for me as the player of the year.
Well, guys, on my list, I hate to seem like I just went with the crowd, but again, I am a sucker for people who score lots of points and also have a high percentage from the floor. And that's why I decided to go with Kayla Walker, leading scorer on this Alabama A&M team. They just ran through the SWAC after that first bump in the road against Mississippi Valley. We're still trying to figure out how that happened, but it woke them up from whatever little nap they were on to start conference play, and they were a monster of the Midway ever since then. So she gets my vote. Let's talk to, we got a few people, three. James, did you play college basketball? I know I didn't.
I did not.
Okay, all right. So everybody else on this call did, besides me and James. We were just pretty boys on the radio.
You were pretty. Why were you on the radio?
Well, I went to HBCU. That's all we had. All we had was a radio station. Liv, you balled. You played. Nia, you balled. You played. Tim, you balled. You played. Let's start with Nia. To shoot a high percentage from the floor and get a lot of points, how hard is that?
I mean, it's tough. It's tough, but when you have a player like your Kayla Walkers, right, where, Coach Don Thornton has shared with us, she's a gym rat. She is the heartbeat of this team. And so when you have the opportunity to get in, get extra shots, you're doing the little things after practice. All those small things can help really contribute to your game. And we've seen Kayla Walker, really grow in this conference from UAPB to now Alabama A&M. And I think that this year alone, again, she's just taken advantage to really elevate her game where, okay, maybe I didn't score, I didn't have a high percentage like I wanted last year. So this year, that is the focus. And knowing the relationship that her and Coach Don Thornton have, I know that that was something that they've probably discussed at the top of the season before preseason even started. Hey, what's your goals? What do we want to do? What do we want to work on? And how do we want to continue to be a factor to where we can not only walk out as a SWAC Player of the Year, but also the HBCU Go Women's Player of the Year. So it's something that can be attainable and it can be done. But it all depends on the level of the athlete, the heart and the hustle and the grind. And we've seen that through and through from Kayla Walker this season.
All right, Liv, it speaks also to your basketball smarts, like knowing your spots, knowing how to manipulate the defense to be not only effective, but efficient on the floor.
Yeah, so there's a difference between being a scorer and a volume scorer. So you'll oftentimes hear people use the term volume scorer, and that's a player who, while they may score a lot of points, they have to take a whole lot of shots to get there. And so we have those two things, and sometimes people mix them together, and they shouldn't be, because if you're efficient, that makes you, in my eyes, as someone who played, a true scorer. Whereas if you're taking 25 plus 30 shots to get 20 points, you should get 20 points every single game because you're shooting so much. But as a player, you can tell the good from the average, from the great, with players who have developed their basketball IQ, know their skill sets and the ones around them. So when Nia was explaining Kayla Walker, that really explains her. She knows her teammates so well. She knows where her spots are. And that's why she gets to the free throw line so much, because despite her size, she knows how to use her body against her defenders. And so if you want to be a great basketball player, having that IQ, knowing the strengths of your game, the weakness, how you can kind of hide those weaknesses of your game as you develop is key when you're looking at what makes these players who they are.
All right, Tim, what is the story behind the story? When you look at a stat sheet, everybody's eyes always goes to points. You as a former player trying to put yourself in that player's shoes, where do your eyes go on the stat sheet?
Yeah, I'm as a former efficient player myself, I made half of my shots. Shot 50% and I played a different era where it wasn't really valued. The 3-point shot wasn't valued, but I shot 44% from three, but I didn't take the volume like Liv was talking about. But at the same time, I was told only shoot shots that you practice, and it sounds so simple, but so many guys get in games and try stuff they haven't even tried before. And that's why you see, I think there's more inefficient players than efficient ones. And that's why we want to reward efficient players. And if you can shoot a lot and be efficient, it's because of that, where we haven't used yet, decision making. We use IQ, but you can have that IQ and still make poor decisions. So one of the things I look at to answer your question off of the stat sheet is shooting percentage. What are you shooting from three? What are you shooting from the field? And then I look at where you're getting those shots. Because if you're a type of player like Jacoby Hetty, he got a lot of breakaway dunks because he's such a good defender. And that's why his percentage was up. But he also was a really good decision maker. He didn't take a lot of bad shots. And then the tough shots that he did take, he was able to make them because he's such a special guy. But yeah, to answer your question, I look at the shooting percentage from both the 2 points and then the 3 point shooting percentage.
All right, a lot of special men, a lot of special women, but only two can win our first ever HBCU Go Basketball Player of the Year. One from the men's side, one from the women's side. The big reveal is coming up when we come back, right here on The Pulse. Okay, welcome back. The time is now, and I mean like right now. We are about to name the HBCU Go Basketball Players of the Year for men and women. Let's start on the men's side, and the award goes to Daeshun Ruffin from Jackson State University. He led the SWAC in scoring. The guy was a walking bucket. You heard everyone on the call here. People love Daeshun Ruffin. So congratulations, Daeshun. You are our HBCU Go Player of the Year for men's basketball. On the women's side, it's some big energy because our first ever award goes to Kayla Walker for Alabama A&M. You heard the love throughout the show, and that love was consistent on the ballots of the voters. Congratulations to Kayla. Alabama A&M, our HBCU Go Women's Basketball Player of the Year. All right, let's react to it, guys. Tim Scarborough, you hear the winners. Do you agree? Was it a great choice on both sides?
Well, when you're doing an election or any voting, you always want your guy to win. And there was a lot of good candidates, as we talked about. But I'm happy to see that everybody picked the two people that I picked at the top of my list. So, yes, I'm happy with both of those.
All right, Nia Simone, I remember you saying a few minutes ago how much you loved Kayla Walker, and everyone has respect and love for Daeshun Ruffin. Look, numbers don't lie. What do you think of our first ever award winners?
I didn't expect anything less. Like I said, every single candidate on that list, I sat at that ballot just making sure. I'm like, okay, should I go here? Should I go here? Should I go Zanaya? Should I go Kayla? Should I go Talia? It's so many great options. It was such great hoops around the HBCU basketball world from Division I, Division II, D3, NAIA, as you mentioned. But of course, Kayla Walker and Daeshun Ruffin, two dominant players within the SWAC that have led their teams in so many things, right? Two great leaders on and off the court. And so, I highly agree with both of those choices. They were both at the top of my list as well.
All right, Liv, you showed love for D2 across the board, and look at the SWAC just coming in here and sweeping the awards.
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, it's up to people's interpretation. And again, I'm not taking away from what anyone did, but, people vote how they think is the best. And those were just my opinions. But both Daeshun and Kayla are incredibly worthy and deserving of these awards. They've both put in the work, the time, the stats, the teams winning, all of that in order to garner this accomplishment and be named the first ever HBCU Go Players of the Year. So they definitely deserved it for sure.
All right, James, you were on the call for both of these guys at one point during the season. You've seen them play. Man, when you're at either on the mic or at home watching when James is out in the streets from time to time. He spent the whole month celebrating his birthday. At what point did you look at Kayla? Did you look at Daeshun and say, "Hey, that's a player of the year right there"?
Well, for Kayla, we'll go back to last year when they fell in the conference tournament, and I saw the look on her eyes. She had to be held and consoled by her coach, and so I knew she was going to come back this year on a mission, and the entire Bulldogs squad was on that mission, and she was the leader, the captain of that ship. So I just knew from there how things were going to go. And when you see Daeshun Ruffin and the way he plays, his assistant coach, Trey Johnson, said that he's the smartest player on the court every single time he steps on the court, has a super high IQ. He had 147 made free throws, which is almost 40 more than anybody else in the entire league. So we talk about IQ, ability to get to the basket, ability to defend way above his height, and then also scoring and assisting. And so he's just an all-around player. And so that's how I knew both of those players were definitely worthy of being the players of the year.
I love both selections. I voted for Kayla as the player of the year. I went with Hetty, but no disrespect at all to Daeshun Ruffin. You look at his numbers, and they are absolutely fabulous. The thing that I love the most is that there was so many possibilities, and I think this year of HBCU basketball has seen a lot of good homegrown talent, a lot of transfer talent, some circle the block talent with Jacoby Hetty. Nia, I'll kick it back to you real fast. Like, I thought there was a lot of saturation when it came to individual talent, and a lot of that leading to team success across all levels of play in HBCU basketball this year.
Yeah, you like you mentioned, you've seen it from all levels. Of course, uh, even thinking about Fayetteville State, for the women's side, right, and thinking about how a lot of those women, Talia Trotter, Talia Stevens, just all of those women, right, even though Fayetteville State they fell short in the CIAA, their success and what they've done to the team can help elevate the team, right? What they bring onto the court. We looked at Clark Atlanta, Adriana Gardner, even though they fell short, right? Liv just talked about just how she's been able to bring up her team and bring them with her, how she's able to use her size advantage to be able to be dominant down low. And then, of course, Maya Charles is another person, right? Your Kayla Walkers, all of these players, just speaking on the women's side, and then of course the men's side, Jacoby Hetty, Daeshun Ruffin, Larry Howell from Fayetteville State on the men's side. So all in all, again, incredible athletes across the board. I thought we had some great selections this year. To where it just has you thinking, right? Where it's like we talked about the point advantage, right? Where you could be a great scorer, but do you have high basketball IQ? And it got down to that level of seeing some of these athletes, whether it was on television or calling their games, to know, okay, well, I know that Kayla Walker knows how to make the extra pass if she needs to, right? She's not trying to force herself to go into 3 or 4 players to draw the foul. She knows how to kick it out to her teammate in the corner. Those little things really take you a long way. And so that came in with the decision making when it came to selecting these players.
All right, you have heard from the analyst. You have heard all of our commentary. Let's now hear from the winners. Our first ever Players of the Year here at HBCU Go. Daeshun Ruffin from Jackson State University. Kayla Walker from Alabama A&M. Guys, congratulations.
I mean, first I just want to say thank God. My journey was kind of wild. Couldn't do it without him. Just want to say thank him, thank my mom, everybody that support me. Last but not least, my teammates. I couldn't do it without y'all boys pushing me each and every day. I feel like we overcame a lot this year, and we still got more to do, so hope we get it done. And the coaching staff, y'all always push me to be the best version of myself, and I feel like I became that this year, so appreciate y'all.
This wouldn't be possible without my teammates and my parents and the coaching staff. And I love them and I love everybody. And I'm just so thankful and so proud of everybody and my teammates.
Once again, congratulations to our HBCU Go inaugural Players of the Year, Daeshun Ruffin from Jackson State, Kayla Walker from Alabama A&M. Man, balling in the SWAC this year, but they were balling across all leagues in HBCU hoops. Thank you so much for joining us on the Pulse. Thank you so much for joining us on HBCU Go all season long. It was 10 dynamite weeks. We look forward to doing it again next season. Best of luck. We'll have 3 HBCU teams, on the men's side at least, in the NCAA basketball tournament. And congratulations and all the success to the women who make the tournament as well. For the entire crew, I'm Tali Carr. You have been watching The Pulse right here on HBCU Go.
You got some Go merch. Some Go merch, man.
This is probably the one player that I've coached for the longest, I think, in my career, a 5-year span for us being together. But she's a wonderful person. I think her character is what's impactful to me in my life, and every program that we've had that she's been a part of, every team that she's been a part of every year. She's a leader. She's so hardworking, very resilient, and I don't know if I could have asked for anything else from her. She gives me everything she has every day.